I'm actually a summer intern with the clinic, one of two interns for the summer, who's basically specifically working on a project regarding Palestinian refugees leaving Iraq. But the clinic in general is definitely, it's one of the first Palestinian law clinics in Palestine that's working to give a more hands-on practical legal education to the students. Because the legal education here is a mix of different types of law, from the British Mandate and Jordanian law, Israeli law, to kind of get a better idea of how human rights works in this area. So the clinic works on taking the students for practical experience in the field and with different organizations.
Right.
To give them a more well-rounded legal education.
Right. Tell me a bit about some of the institutions you work with. Al-Haq, that's based in
Al-Haq was one, the deal.
What's their, do you know anything about their background?
I don't know too much about their background. Al-Haq is definitely more of an organization that's working on human rights violations with the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza and this area. The deal, for example, is a refugee rights organization that's focused on refugee issues, the right to return, which is a very big one. Adala is another Palestinian organization working based in Israel. So the students actually work with them as well. The students also, they've actually been divided into two groups. One group is the students who have only West Bank IDs, so they work with organizations based here, Al-Haq, the deal. And then the other students are the ones with Jerusalem IDs, who also provide almost like free legal services and informational sessions with Palestinians and Arabs in Jerusalem to kind of give them an idea of their rights and what guarantees and what they should know their legal rights are as Arabs living in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm. We've just been round the Abu Jihad Museum for political prisoners in Palestine. Do you work with political prisoners now? Does this clinic work on issues of detainees and so on?
The clinic does a little bit. As of right now, because the clinic's only been here for 1 year, their focus is definitely more on the students.
Right.
And so the idea is to have the students get some hands-on training with other organizations in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. They've started to work on actual campaigns that are focused in the clinic, like, for example, my campaign with the refugees in Iraq. My other colleague's campaign was regarding the ring road that's being built.
What is the ring road they're planning to build around Jerusalem?
They're trying to connect the settlements in the West Bank to Jerusalem with a private road that would be only open to Israeli settlers. But the problem is that the consequences of building this ring road are pretty severe for the houses that are going to be demolished in their way, and it's basically going to draw, it's almost equivalent to the wall as to how it's going to be cutting apart communities and families in the West Bank.
And on this campus, this university, Al-Quds, the Arabic University of Jerusalem, you've got a wall right in the middle of your campus.
Yes.
Yeah. How does that affect the life of the university?
I mean, I think if anything, it gives the students a constant reminder that, there is an occupation and it's right there in front of them. The fact that the university used to be connected with Al-Quds in Jerusalem, now it's very separated. It's completely in the West Bank. It's much harder for students to get into Jerusalem. A lot of them have problems getting in and out of the university because of that wall and the barriers.
So the other side of the wall, there's other buildings, there's other faculties there.
Right. I believe they I'm not too familiar with the setup, but I believe they have some buildings in Jerusalem as well.
Tell us about your campaign to do with Palestinian refugees in Iraq, because we're working on a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the whole Middle East.
Well,
what's the situation of Palestinians in Iraq?
Well, the situation there is the fact that a lot of the Palestinians, since the occupation in 2003, have been targeted as being Saddam's people. And they were given preferential treatment under Saddam's reign. So now what the issue is that, considering he's not there anymore, a lot of the local Iraqis have been attacking and targeting Palestinians. And as a result, they're being tortured, kidnapped, murdered, and they've been fleeing. The numbers went from 34 to 54,000 down to only 13,000 left in Baghdad, and then another 2,000 that are living in the no man's land. So the clinic got involved with this issue about a year ago, one of the issues that they considered working on. And they held a conference in March, bringing together other key players, the UNHCR, UNRWA, the PLO, to kind of work towards a solution for this issue. And as a result, a lot of recommendations were created, but there's been nobody to follow up with the organizations. So our project this summer was to follow up with those organizations and find out what progress has been made, and possibly even start advocating and lobbying for these refugees.
And some of them you say are in no man's land.
Yes.
Can you describe what you mean by that?
There's basically in the beginning when Palestinians were leaving Iraq, they were given entrance into Jordan or Syria. But later on, when the two countries realized the sudden influx, they closed their borders. And these Palestinians weren't allowed to re-enter Iraq, nor were they allowed to go into Syria or Jordan. So they've been living in the desert areas on the borders for about 5 years now.
And how many people are living in those conditions?
There's about 2,600 as of right now.
In like tents? Or
basically, it's like the epitome of a refugee camp. You know, they're pitched up tents. They have very basic needs. Children only get basic education. So children that could have been in high school or in university by now, they're still basically stuck without education.
And what's the sort of official stand by the Palestinian government, Palestinian National Authority?
Well,
that situation?
The PLO has been working with a couple of other organizations, with the UNHCR in particular, to try to find third countries to allow for resettlement. But, I mean, in our opinion and from what we've worked on, it hasn't been as strong of an effort as it could be. I would think that their biggest excuse is that there's a lot of refugees that they have to deal with. You know, there's so many refugees within the West Bank and within Gaza that also have issues. But these refugees in particular, I mean, they're still in tents, they're in the desert, and the PLO just needs to step up and make a little bit more of an effort to get them relocated. And a lot of countries that we've spoken to, for example, the Netherlands, asked us in particular, where is the PLO in this matter? And so a lot of the international community is waiting, for some reason, waiting for the PLO to stand up and say, please take these refugees, which they've tried to do. They have one agreement that they negotiated with Sudan, because Sudan was the only Arab League country to step up and take refugees. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't in favor of this because Sudan isn't exactly where you'd want to send more people. There's so many people fleeing Sudan right now.
Yeah, because of Darfur.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a pending agreement, and we're currently working against it.
Right, so this is your job at the moment?
This is our work at the moment. It's just about coming to a close. This is my last week here, and I'll be returning to the States, and my students are going to start their next semester, so...
Okay, so just finally, what's your feelings, having spent some time studying here in Al-Quds University? What do you feel about the situation between Israel and Palestine? Do you see peace as a possibility? Do you think truth can help that process? Is reconciliation possible?
I don't know. I mean, reconciliation it's hard because I've made a point while I've been here to speak to as many people as possible. And I'll just be sitting on the bus and try to start a conversation with the person next to me, or someone, a fruit vendor.
Right.
And there's a lot of tension, but at the same time, there's a lot of people have just given up. They've given up hope of ever seeing an end to the occupation, or to actually see equality between the two ethnicities. And I think that'll be the biggest challenge, to tell people that there is hope and that they can come together and actually see an end to this issue. But the majority of what I hear is that, it's been 60 years. I mean, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
We're getting used to the checkpoints, we're getting used to the wall. I mean, I'm not to say that's everybody, but it's definitely a 50. To me, it feels like there's a 50-50 split.
Right. And you were saying there was some conference recently comparing the South African situation to what's happening.
I know there's been a delegation from South Africa. I don't know too many details about this because it was before I arrived. But they've been talking with the clinic and having panels and conferences, not huge formal conferences, but meetings and discussions about the South African issue and comparing that with Palestine and Israel and the current occupation.
The reason I think the Truth and Reconciliation Commission worked in South Africa is it was after the political settlement had happened.
Right.
There was equality, Mandela was out of prison,
yes,
and so on. It could then help with the healing, retrospectively.
I think it can definitely help the healing. Though it seems like a very big issue is a political problem. You know, I mean, it's things where you think that, okay, you know, Israel is saying we built a wall for our protection. Yes, you may have built it for your protection, but what does protection have to do with the settlements that are increasingly being built in the West Bank? And things like the Ring Road. I mean, it's issues like this that just, that confuse you, really. I mean,
so those are all separate topics that ought to be on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission desk, in effect.
Right.
And each one then discussed by experts.
Right. It's really
it's a big one.
And I think one of the biggest issues right now, especially even if the West Bank was, if Palestine was to get its autonomy and to be recognized as a country.
Right.
What do we do with those settlements? I mean, that seems to be and that's something I've specifically asked people about. I mean, do you see, and the general consensus among the people I've spoken to in Palestine has been the settlements are going to have to leave. But it's like, okay, well, we can go back to 1948 all over again, just turned around. So it's issues like this that are definitely more political that would have to be sorted out before the Truth and Reconciliation process can go through.
Final question. I mean, this is obviously,
in my opinion.
An Islamic university, or is there an Islamic theology faculty or philosophy faculty there, do you know?
I'm not sure about that. There might be. The students might know more about that. But I've been pretty focused on the clinic.
Just the specific thing.
Right.
And do you work within Islamic law as well?
The clinic?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. I think they're definitely more focused on human rights and humanitarian law.
Yeah.
There is a Center for Humanitarian Law, I believe.
Right, it's sort of religious law, that kind of thing, like the Temple Mount, say, in Jerusalem.
Oh, no, I think they're
definitely,
I think they're more focused on human rights,
Yeah.
at this stage.
Not divine rights.
No, not quite.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Really appreciate it. And let's hope that, you know, your work is going to lead to some solution to the people that are stuck in this no man's land.
Right, no,
it's a horrendous place to be. Why can't they come back to Palestine? I mean, wouldn't that be sensible, or is it just...
It would be the most sensible, but the entire issue is the right to return, and Israel does not want more Palestinians to be in the West Bank or in Gaza.
So Israel itself would block them from coming back here?
I mean, that's been the biggest issue, and that's a big part of this... of our problem, and we have to constantly say that we're looking for third country resettlement options.
Because they're not allowed to come back here.
Right, but we want to maintain that in the end they should have the right to come back. And I mean, the United Nations has said that they have the right to return to Palestine. The only problem is that the Israeli government comes in the middle of it. And
still controls the external frontiers.
Right, I mean, the West Bank and Gaza are completely surrounded by Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, even though the West Bank on a map, it looks like it's on the edge. I mean, there's that entire section along the Dead Sea and the Jordanian border. That's all Israeli controlled.
Right.
So I mean, it's still completely blockaded.
Yeah.
And there's no way for Palestinians to get in or out.
Sure. So only when there's a final political settlement and they have autonomous control of their own frontiers is that
essentially
possibility of them coming east to the West Bank.
Yeah, we're talking about like 4 or 5 million people.
Well,
I was
just focusing on your 12,000.
Yes, I mean, if these 13,000 could come back, or 15 in total, basically, to just come back to Palestine, it would be great. But Israel would never allow that.
So, from the point of view of, I'm just interested in the Iraq invasion and its impact on Palestinian society. Because you're an American citizen, right?
Yes.
But from Palestinian origin from this area.
Well, I'm actually Pakistani.
From Pakistan.
Yes.
Sorry.
I'm just interested.
Yeah. So you're saying that under Saddam Hussein, he took the Palestinian cause quite seriously, did he?
Yes, he took in a lot of Palestinians, and they were given a lot of rights, and they were essentially given free housing when they were in Iraq.
Right.
And that was at the expense of the Iraqis. He also tried to establish an army that was going to, like the Jerusalem army, that was going to liberate Jerusalem and liberate Palestine. But it was things like this where it was mandatory for the Iraqis to serve in the army,
Right.
but yet not so mandatory on the Palestinians.
Yeah.
So it was issues like this that created a lot of friction between the local Iraqis and the refugee Palestinians in Baghdad. But while Saddam was in reign, nobody obviously would raise a hand against them.
Do you think the reasons for the invasion, was it anything to do with his stand on the Jerusalem-Palestine issue, or Israel-Palestine issue? Why do you think America invaded?
Why do I
Is
think?
that one of the reasons? Yeah.
I don't know if that would be one of the reasons. I mean, to be honest, I can't really be clear about why the war even started, except for the fact that I don't believe that there are weapons of mass destruction, or were. If anything, if you really want my opinion on why the war started, more or less to get more of a U.S. stronghold in this area. That's my personal view on it.